Hey everyone. Last time I showed you how I sewed the jumper I made for May, but that's not good enough for a competition. Having patterned and sewn it all myself, that's perfect, but it's so plain. So let's add beading, props, a wig, and maybe some airbrushing. We're gonna make it good. So I put this project on hold for like an entire year and then came back to it to make it competition ready. So we're gonna start with doing the airbrushing. I may or may not have lost this footage, so since it's all built and everything, it needs more dimension. Wait, I found the footage. I just airbrushed in all the shadows of the body. Chest, a little bit in the waist. I shaded seam lines. On this, it's the yoke line and the front has pin tucks, so I'm shading in those. I'm using a piece of paper as well to get crisp, sharp lines. I shaded wrinkles in the puff on the sleeve and in like where the elbow bends and all the like kind of gathers that are happening around the legs. I could have also just used a paintbrush and like some watered down acrylic and given it a bit of dimension, because that's what it needs, just some dimension. And with the jumper looking three-dimensional, let's add some sparkle. For this, we're gonna do beading and lace applique. So I made a little raven applique out of Lace by the Yard. I basically just cut up all the pretty flowers and swoops and swirls in the lace and just Frankensteined it all together onto the traced image of a raven. I did it in 3 pieces, the body, the front wing, and the back wing, pinning all the little pieces together. Then I put the 3 separate pieces together again and stitched that to create the final image. I then spent hours and hours adding sparkles and beads and sequins based on images I saw on Pinterest to create like a bird feel. And with those pieces done, I placed them on my little jumper and spent a couple hours hand sewing each piece on. And now she sparkles. Yippee! Now let's do more interesting stuff, like a prop. Okay, I'm making May's super awesome, ginormous battle axe. And to do this, I need it to break down because that thing cannot stay that big in my house. I'm breaking it down into the blade and then the handle into 3 separate pieces. So 4 pieces altogether. The handle is made out of PVC pipe. I think it's 1.5 inches diameter. I cut it to be basically the height of the axe because I'm gonna insert into the blade of the axe so that it's nice and sturdy. I then put inch-wide dowels with a bit of foam to pat it out because it wasn't quite wide enough, and that will hold the PVC pieces into one big handle. So let's talk about actually making the blade. It's 3 layers of XPS foam, I think that's what it's called, layered together with like a rectangle out of the middle piece so there's a guide for the PVC to go in. I also put a Gatorade cap at the top of this slot with the bottom half being attached to the PVC itself. Now, I did a bad job gluing this in, apparently, because after a day of con, it broke and fell out. If you use this technique, do a good job gluing it. Now, with all my layers glued together and a little slot for the PVC, I started shaping the actual blade. Before gluing, I had cut everything into rough shapes, so now I'm like proper pulling it down into the shape I want and then cutting in the edge of the blade using a X-Acto knife, but with like a saw bit instead of the regular X-Acto blade. The sawing motion made it way easier to cut the XPF foam on the angle. And then I also went in with a power sander to make it all nice and smooth, or at least as best I could, because some areas I couldn't get in, and I had to go in by hand with sandpaper. I also went in with some foam clay into those spots because I couldn't really get it smooth with the sandpaper, so just to really get it nice, I used the foam clay. And now with it all smooth and everything, let's texturize it. So I just used like a ball of tinfoil to give it texture, and then May has this like design on the face of the blade. I really don't know what it is, but I interpret it as hammered metal in like a roughly flower shape. So to do that, I covered the area in a light layer of foam clay and used the back of a buttonholer because its handle was rounded at the bottom, so I could slam it into the foam clay to create that hammered metal look. As for the handle, this is a detail that I did on my Ita staff that I really love because it makes it look more like complete and it makes it very durable. I wrapped the bottom of the PVC in a layer of Warbler, and it's just scrap Warbler that I pieced together. I wrapped the end, cut away all the excess to make sure it was shaped properly. I didn't put heat resistant gloves on like a dummy, and I definitely burned my fingers, so don't do that. But I love this because now I can slam it onto the ground, and the Warbler is strong enough that it won't dent or like break or anything, and it creates a much smoother finished look to the entire handle. Then we do priming with my favorite craft glue and water. I did, I think, like 3 layers and then went in with more sandpaper to make it extra smooth again because it was kind of looking rough. And then we begin painting, and I sprayed a base color onto the blade and the handle. Then we do a little bit of weathering. On the blade, I just mixed my silver with some black, and I think I might have put a bit of brown in there so that I could get like a gunmetal sort of color. I watered it down so that it would go into all of the texture I put in it, and just did little area by little area and then wiping away all the high points. And with the handle, I tried going in with acrylic paint. I didn't like the look, so then I went back in with the airbrush, which I liked way better, and I did my best to paint like a sort of wood grainy texture. Also, when I tried to seal my handle, my stupid sealant messed up all my paint, and I don't know why.
What is that?
It might be because it was like -20 because it was the middle of January, but like, how dare it? Did turn out with a cool texture, but what the heck. For the last bit on the prop, I did not film this because I didn't know what I was doing. I added a wrapping on the handle, on the bottom of the handle. I think it's really cool, and I also added what's called a monkey fist, which I learned making this. Because I thought it was fun, like a little keychain vibe. The very last piece for this competition piece, the wig, which I also didn't film. I'm so sorry. But let me tell you what I did. This wig used to be Ida from the Owl House, crimped the entire wig because I need big hair, and I sectioned out the front braid from the rest of the hair, and starting with the braid in the back, I did a French braid from like near the crown of the head down. I'm not pulling the hair tight because I don't want to show any wefts by accident, and I just braided it up. And then doing the front one, I teased the front a little bit so that it would be nice and floofy, and I created a little swoop using the steamer to make it all smooth and make it stay, along with some hairspray, and positioned it so that the braid wouldn't sit directly in front of my eye, because the last time I wore this costume, having it in front of my eye like threw off my depth perception, and I was like, I'm not walking around caught with bad depth perception, so it's gonna sit sort of beside my eye. Anyway, point being, I added the little swoop, which I really like, and I braided it, and I thought it needed to be longer, so I happened to already have braiding hair in a matching gray because I used it to make a hairpiece for future Ida, so I just used some of that and braided it into the front braid and cut away the excess length. And that's how I did my wig. And that's it. That's my costume. We styled a wig, we did lace applique and shaping lace, beading, airbrushing, shading, prop making. We did a lot, and I took it to CSC and competed in their cosplay contest. It was a lot of fun, and I won a Best in Sewing award, and that's what I'm really proud of, the fit. And I hope this video is helpful for anyone who wants to make a costume to compete. Thanks!